hopefully this class will not be too awful long, but we're all the way, which we studied last week, all the way basically until we came to the last 7 years. All right. Now, before we get started on the last 7 years, I need to show you something that is pretty important. All right. I know you probably can't see it, but there's an arrow on this side of the 7 years, and there's an arrow on this side of the 7 years. The way Gog and Magog read is we could actually be here when Gog and Magog begin the war. We're already seeing the peace treaties, we're already seeing the players fall into place, we're already seeing things come to pass, and we're already seeing like just things like what we were talking about last week, pieces of the puzzle go into place. Now, the fulfillment of prophecy and the part where you're living in prophecy is different, okay? Now, fulfillment of the prophecy. Jesus said that the temple would be destroyed and that every stone would be thrown down, and that's what happened, and it was fulfilled. I mean, it happened, it's past, and everything else. So, how do you determine whether that you're past the prophecy, you're not yet in the prophecy, or you're in the middle of the prophecy? So, you take Gog and Magog. Now, we are literally in the process of the prophecy unfolding. That means that you're actually living inside of the time. It started, but it hasn't completed yet. Completion of Gog and Magog is where basically God defends the Israel people and he fights for them. And the players in Gog and Magog, which if you took the three, I guess you could say the three largest, you would have Russia, Turkey, and then Iran. Those would be your primary three, okay? So, and there's some other ones, but now they're in the midst of Saudi Arabia and all these other countries signing a peace treaty, which are the countries that will protest. They won't fight for Israel. They're just going to protest it. So, the 7-year tribulation. Now, you can hear all kinds of things. You can literally hear the Great Tribulation has come and passed. That's wrong. That's just wrong. You can hear that we're in the process of living in it. That's wrong. Okay? And you can even hear some people say that the Great Tribulation, the first 3.5 years is just a time of peace. That's wrong too, okay? Because the first 3.5 years, 25% of the entire population of the earth dies. I got news for you. That ain't peace and security. Now, the Great Tribulation. Now, we're going to look at some Bible verses, and y'all can help me read some of these. And we're going to try to flip through them. And they're going to be kind of rapid fire. But I want to say something before we start reading them, all right? What other names are there for the Great Tribulation? I wrote one of them up there. The one that's right above Gog and Magog.
Great day of the Lord.
The great day of the Lord, the great judgment of the Lord, the day of the Lord. You know, and the funny thing is about it is that particular saying in the Bible is all through the Bible. All through the Bible. So how do you determine, and one of the things that you do it with, how do you determine if he's talking about something that's about to happen to Israel, or if he's talking about something that's about to happen to the world? And that's some of what we're going to look at today, because there is periods of time where something happened to Israel, Egypt, Babylon, you know, something happened to the countries, and it was a judgment call. And you know, I understand that some people say that, like, I'm going to use this as an example, like say California right now. It's on fire all over the place. There's been people, arsons, going out there and starting it, causing the fire and everything else. And you'll hear people say, even people in the church, they'll say, well, it's bad maintenance where California has been listening to eco people, not keeping the forest bottom clean and not doing control burns and everything else. But a lot of people tend to miss something. If God knows the future, runs the future, controls everything, then I'm pretty near sure that God told them people not to clean that forest bottom. And I'm pretty sure that he saved it, built it up until a day where he needed to let people know, okay, you're not acting right. And they'll say, well, it doesn't have anything to do with the judgment of God. That would be wrong, all right? And why am I saying that would be wrong? Well, if you believe that God controls everything, then plain and simple fact is he's also controlling the number of fires. Whether a human being starts it, or whether lightning starts it, or whether whoever starts it, he has some form or fashion of control.
One more coming.
Got one more coming. Come on in.
Hey.
If I'd have known y'all were coming, I'd have waited.
That's okay.
We never know if we're coming or not. We
Come-
start getting ready.
You don't know if you're coming or going.
Y'all come on.
Do you realize
Y'all
we
come
just
on
have
in like
15
Lynn.
minutes?
But anyway,
Hey, yeah.
so basically what I'm saying is about the stuff that's going on in California right now.
What all is
All
that?
right.
The fires.
So you have all the fires, you have all these different things occurring. And now, and two, the funny thing is this, is it a judgment? Is it a God pulling his hand away from California? Is it something that is being just let go? You know, that would be impossible for any man to say. It's about the same thing for me to say it's definitely the judgment of God. No easier than somebody else can say it's not the judgment of God, because nobody knows what God's thinking, right? So here's the plain and simple fact of the matter is this. If God deems California to burn to the ground, I don't care what time of the year it is, it's going to burn to the ground. You know, they're going to suffer consequences for rebelling against God. And do I believe it's a form of a judgment? Sure. I believe anything that doesn't happen but a beautiful sunny day, you know, God had his hand in it, because all you gotta do is watch the weather. And you and I can easily detest to this. A weatherman can say, well, it ain't gonna rain today, like he did the other day, and it rained all day, you know? So God picks what happens, you know, and sometimes I think he even fools with weather people. So, because they're predicting the future, and nobody can do that except for God. I mean, they can get a good idea with a radar, but it ain't perfect. And proof of the pudding is, just the other day, wasn't supposed to rain, and it rained all day. Matter of fact, it never quit at my house. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to finish our timeline. The 7 years of the Great Tribulation. So, two things I got to bring up prior to the Great Tribulation. Odds are, Gog and Magog most likely may begin, and the way it reads, I believe it'll begin before, okay? Now, do I believe that it will go before or after the rapture? Well, here is my belief. Now, quoted as that, my belief. All right. It says that God is going to win a battle supernaturally, right? It says he's going to be the one to beat the armies coming down. Now, what better perfect time would it be that if God not only these countries come down on Israel to take the spoil, God defeats them, and then there shortly after the rapture happens, and the whole world goes into two things back to back, with God opening the door, defeating one of the strongest militaries on the earth, and then rapturing out the church. Now, do I believe which one will be first? I do honestly believe they're going to be almost back to back, because of just the simple fact is that just the supernaturalness of it occurring and leading into the Great Tribulation. All right, now we're going to start reading, and I'll go first, and whoever wants to go next, I'm gonna call out, and you can raise your hand if you want to read this. I'm gonna read Jeremiah 30. All right. Somebody else read Zephaniah chapter 1, verse 14. Somebody else read Revelation 6:17. Somebody else read Micah 4:5, and then one more, and then we'll go to the next row here in a minute. Joel 2:31. Right? So whoever wants to read, I'm gonna start with Jeremiah 30.
Let us find it for you.
Yeah. Just about could open up your Bible to the center, and you just about find it.
It's after Isaiah, some.
Yep.
What?
It is right after Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel. All right,
I know it's right there.
Jeremiah
Huh?
chapter 30. And I'm aiming for
Where's that?
I got it. What was Zephaniah?
1:14. Zephaniah 1:14.
Okay.
All right, I was going to read
Jeremiah 30, what?
Jeremiah 30, and I'm gonna start with 6, and I'm gonna read 6 and 7. Okay, so we'll do Jeremiah, and then I'm gonna call them all out again as we go. So 6, ask and see whether a man can give birth. Why then do I see every man with his hand on his stomach like a woman in labor, and every face turned pale? Okay? Now you gotta remember, everything we're about to read is either coinciding with the Great Tribulation. And after I read verse 7, I'm gonna explain something before we read Zephaniah 1. How awful that day will be. Okay, now this is the Great Tribulation. How awful will that day be? There will be none like it. And pay attention to this, because this is very important that especially the church understands this. It will be a time of trouble for Jacob. Jacob is Israel, okay? But he will be delivered out of it, okay? And I'd love to be able to go farther, but we have too many scriptures to go to today, because there's a lot of neat stuff in this. Now, something that people need to understand, out of this 7 years, there is no comfortable day. You know, if you ever hear a preacher say, oh, the first 3.5 years is just a time of peace and all this other stuff, just ask them, in peace, does 2 billion people die? So that's what happens in the first 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation. 2 billion people die or disappeared off the face of the earth. Part of it may be us in the rapture. But anyway, all of this comes to pass, and it basically says that where a woman would suffer greatly in labor, that a man now will be the one suffering in such anguish. And really, once you open the book of Revelation, you can clearly see that all of the turmoil and all of the terrible things that actually are occurring on the face of the earth. And here's something else I need to point out to you. Okay, if you remember in Matthew, God said that how do you tell the 3.5 year point, like the prophet Daniel said? He said it's easy. The abomination of desolation would stand in the rebuilt temple and basically declare himself to be God, right? So the peace treaty, most likely, in the 2 billion people who are dead, most likely have some consequence in Gog and Magog also. So what you really have to look at is, when this begins to ramp up, it's kind of like a little whirly wheel. It gets bigger and bigger and worse, and it just, as it goes around, it just grows in magnitude. Matter of fact, God himself said, if I didn't do something about it, didn't cut it short, nobody would live on the face of the entire earth. They'd all be dead. Okay, the earth would perish. There'd only people left would be the people that go into the eternal state. Now, Zephaniah, Teresa, I take it you're going to read that one, being you said something. Zephaniah 1:14.
I just wanted to know where it was.
Yeah, Zephaniah
I had it just a second. Zephaniah 1:13.
1:14.
14. The great day of the Lord is near and rapidly approaching. Listen to the day of the Lord, then the warrior's cry is bitter.
Okay. Now, like I said earlier, matter of fact, right before y'all walked in, one of the names for the Great Tribulation is the Great Day of the Lord. That means he's come to the end of his rope. He no more, you know, everything is about to be cleaned up, and everything is about to go into a completely different kingdom, which would be the millennial kingdom. All right? So, again, another prophet calling out, saying, okay, here is the great day of the Lord. Now, I'll read the next one, and then somebody get Micah chapter 4. Micah chapter 4. And I'm going to read Revelation 6 and 17. All right? Now, in saying what I'm about to read, because we just got finished studying that, now, do you remember in the book of Daniel? Now, we're at a point here, we're in the book of Daniel, that God has turned over the entire earth, basically, to King Jesus. Has turned it over to him. And matter of fact, Mr. Schuster's buddy said something to me in church on Sunday, and he made a statement on what is how we're doing the class today, is what has been fulfilled, what we're in the midst of, and what is yet to come. But anyway, so you take this and you look at something. What is the fulfillment of King Jesus's reign? Basically what God told him, you're going to reign until all of your enemies have been put under your feet. You have conquered all your foes. And then we will go into the eternal state. So watch this part here, and that's one of the reasons why I'm saying this, is because of what this says. And I'm going to start with, well, I tell you what, I'm going to actually back up. Let me back up to 16. I was just going to read 17, but I'm going to go ahead and read 16 too. And they said to the mountains and to the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of the one sitting on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Okay, so first, now that's telling us who is in control of this great day of the Lord, that 7-year tribulation, the one in Daniel, because the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? Again, we're reading again the same thing. What is about and what has come on the earth. Now, before, who's going to read Micah 4? Who's got that one in their Bible? Whoever's got Micah 4. Micah 4, you got it? All right, go ahead and read Micah 4 and verse 5.
For all people will walk everyone in the name of his God, and we will walk in the name of the Lord our God forever and ever.
Okay, so you now see what is, there is no escape. There is no hiding. There is no running. So you got in the book of Revelation, you have who can stand against this. And what she just read, if you think to yourself, okay, you know, I picked this way to worship God, not the way he deems correct. I picked this way. And it basically is saying that because we picked correctly, we worship God like the Bible tells us to worship God, then we are going down a correct path. So, and this here, now I don't know how many of you like Joel, but I love Joel. He's one of the neatest prophets. So 2:31, if you find it before I do, sorry, I got it. Oh, you got it? All right, then Bill,
The sun
2:31.
shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord.
Okay, now, in
Mine says great and terrible.
every, I don't know how many times it is spoken of in the Bible as far as the great tribulation, the great day of the Lord, and all the things that come to pass. And it was, you're looking at, I'm trying to figure out what he just read, it was
Yeah.
Joel 2. Joel 2:31.
2:31.
He said, his said before the great and awesome day, and mine says before the great and terrible day.
Yeah. Well, now, let me tell you this, because the Christian Standard Bible calls it the great and all-inspiring day. And what, and what your Bible says, and what his says, and what mine says is all correct, because it is going to be, for us, a great day, for the earth, a terrible day. I mean, a terrible day. All right. Now, I want to point something out to you. Watch this. All right. So the first 3.5 years of the day of the Lord, all right, I already told you how many people perish, right? All right. You remember there's something else that occurs in the first 3.5 years, and it's 2 prophets, right? So you have 2 prophets who stand in Jerusalem declaring that Jesus is the Messiah, all right? They're declaring there's one path only, and if you follow this Antichrist, you will die. Now, let me tell you something. I want you to just think about something. These guys, for however long they stand there, it is a very long period of time. Because basically, at the halfway point is when they die, and because you got to remember where they're standing at. They're standing right there where the new temple is, declaring that Jesus is the Messiah, because you got to remember they're going to try and restart it back up to sacrifices. All right? Do you remember what it says about these 2 prophets? Basically, anybody that can test them, they can literally say, fire, and you're consumed. So there's going to be no argument with these guys for this period of time. But at a certain period at a time, they get killed, remember? And they are so hated, I mean so hated, that everybody on this planet thinks it's Christmas Day when they die. All right? They just think it's the most wonderful thing that's ever occurred. They're so hated, they lay with a camera on them for 3.5 days. For 3.5 days, an angel comes down, or Jesus comes down. It really doesn't call out who, but it says that God calls them up. Basically says, get up and come up here. They literally stand up. All their skin goes back to normal. They're back alive, and the people watch them go up. All right? So now, if you take the way Revelation is put together, you got to understand something. That at this point, the 144,000 are probably active, but they're probably not as active and they're under a protection too of God. So now they're going to begin their missionary trip, but now that two prophets are no longer blocking the temple, the Antichrist can go in there and declare himself God, right? So the great day of the Lord comes about as such a horrible status. And, you know, I know that some of the stuff going on today is preparing us for the mark. Not that we'll ever see it. Don't worry. I'm not saying a Christian will ever see the mark of the beast. You'll never have to worry about it. You'll be way gone before the mark of the beast ever really comes around. But what it is doing is preparing. Now, I don't know how many of you are, I'm kind of a little bit on the wacky side as far as wanting to watch anything that they come out with where I can hear a person begin to prophesy and not even realize they're doing it. So I'm watching this street preacher, and I'm watching this girl that she is taking him down the road, and she's giving him all that she can give him, and she's naming out, and here's the thing you should really watch, she's naming out like charitable things to do, like giving a poor man your jacket, or buying a guy that can't eat a meal. So she's naming out all these things, and she's correct on them. That, you know, she's asking this fellow, why are you not doing this? But out of her same mouth that she's asking that, she's not doing it, and she's using every foul-mouthed word she can possibly use to tell this guy to be a nice guy. And see, here's the point I'm trying to make, is if you follow along with this, because people are taking good and evil and they're lapping them and saying everything's pretty much good, and everything that you're saying that God commands us to do is evil. And she does not even realize it. She's sitting there prophesying. She's following along with everything the Bible says, and they're not following it. All right. Now, we're going to start reading again, because I got to get to this one. John chapter 7. Who wants to read that? John chapter 7.
The whole
And we're going to read 37. All right. John 7, 37. Yep. All right. Whoever wants to read that one, go ahead.
On the last and most important day of the festival, Jesus stood up and cried out, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink."
Okay. So God now, and you must remember this, in the Great Tribulation, God is doing everything He can to witness to as many people as will hear Him. All right? Now, I don't know, where everybody is in their Christian walk, and it's not my place to judge not a single soul, right? Somebody turn to Revelation chapter 16, 14. Revelation chapter 16, 14. I gotta turn, I'm gonna read this next part.
For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty.
Okay, so now you have God on one hand telling people, okay, here's the truth and nothing but the truth. And then you have the devil preaching his gospel. And you know, I heard Stevie Davies say something this morning, and it went so perfect with today's lesson. He asked this question, and he said, you know, are we as a church as enthusiastic as the Antichrist will be about selling his religion? You know, because he's going to do everything in his power to get as many people as humanly possible to take the mark of the beast. And you know, you should think about something. Every Christian sitting in here is asking a person, when you get saved, to take the mark of Jesus Christ. You know, you're saying, when you get baptized, you're making a public confession that I am now a follower of Jesus Christ, and I am now a servant of him, and I am now a disciple, and I am going to learn and spread the gospel the best way I can, right? So basically, you're saying to yourself, here's where my fight is, and here is where the evil person's fight is. Now, taught Wednesday. Bill, he was there, and he can testify to this. All right? And you know, one of the neatest classes you can ever teach, and this is no lie, and anybody who's ever taught, I would say they would say the same thing, is a room full of new faces. You know, because then you understand what God said when he said, look out there, look at the field, it's white, ready for harvest, right? And every time you come into this place and you've got a whole room full of brand new faces, you're thinking to yourself, man, there could be 2, there could be 5, you know, let me get out there and let me see who we can harvest and get into the kingdom of God. Doesn't have anything to do with me. All I am is a person going there to spread the gospel. And at the thing, and I testified right there in front of them guys, I am not worthy to be saved. I don't even rank like 1 million being worthy to be saved. But I am saved, not because of what I did, because of what he did. And see, that's the thing we need to pass around, because when we get to the end of this lesson, there's a part in here that basically, you know, I mean, what is coming down the pipes is horrible. All right, now, Amos. I don't know how many of you love Amos, but Amos was not one to pull a punch. I mean, if I had to say, which, I guess I better not say, because I love all the old prophets. Then some of them guys would stand up in front of the whole crowd wanting to kill them and just say stuff just to tick them off even worse. So I'm going to read Amos chapter 5. First, I'm going to read verse 4, okay? Now, this one is very important. Listen to this. And this is emphasizing what I just said. Amos chapter 5, verse 4 first. For the Lord says to the house of Israel, seek me and live. Okay? Now, you know the funny thing is about it is, I will seek after God, but I still have a date with death unless I'm raptured. So I still have but see, the funny thing is, I won't really ever die. My body will go into a box, and I'll be with God at that moment in his presence in front of him. All right, now, Amos is going to get a little tougher. All right, let's read 18 and 19. Okay? The day of the Lord. Woe to you who long for the day of the Lord. Now, I read this and I got kind of pricked because I'm longing for it. And I said, well, I'm actually not longing for it way he's talking about. So watch. What will the day of the Lord be for you? So that answers the question. See, the day of the Lord for me is a wonderful thing, but the day of the Lord for mankind is a terrible thing. They're going to go up against the God who creates suns, and they actually think they're going to be able to do something with them. It will be darkness and not light. I will be like a man who flees, and I love this part, and I'm sorry, who flees from a lion only to have a bear confront him. All right, so the poor dude's running from a lion, but he's going to run into an animal that's worse with claws, which I don't know which one would be worse. I think I'd almost rather run into a lion than a bear.
You could run from God, but
Yeah.
you're just gonna keep running against bad things.
Yeah,
I like
that
the- I
bear
like
is
the
a
last
nasty
part of that
creature. Yeah, and watch this. And this part here is fascinating. He goes home and rests his head up against the wall, only to have a snake bite him. So no, and all right, a lot of people would read this, and you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, well, ain't that unfair? No, it's not unfair. All right? God's giving you a warning, and he's saying to you, there is no place to run. The great day of the Lord, you cannot flee from. Remember, we just read in Revelation, rocks fall on us, hide us from the Lamb. And it doesn't work like that. All right? You can't run. You can't hide. You can't argue. You can't defeat God. I mean, I asked a guy one time, and we were just talking about this, and he was saying, well, if God sends me to hell, that's fine. I'll just go down there with the rest of my buddies. No, you won't. No, you won't. You probably won't never see a buddy again. You probably won't see another living soul again because of where you'll be at. And the funny thing is, people, you hear people say stuff silly like that, and then when they're in deep trouble or maybe in the front of a judge or anything else about to be sentenced, then you get to see how tough they really are. If somebody gets sentenced to life and they're sitting there bawling or something like that, or even worse, gets sentenced to death and all that, because death to death is a terrible thing. So basically what God is saying is, don't make the mistake, all right? Now, somebody turn in Judges, and I'm going to turn in Joel chapter 2. So somebody turn in Judges chapter 1. Judges chapter 1 and verse 6. Whoever finds it first can start reading. I told you we had a lot of scriptures and we still ain't through yet. We still got a bunch more to go.
When Adonai-Bezek fled, they pursued him, caught him, and cut off his thumbs and big toes.
All right, Judges, will you read that again? Judges chapter 1.
Verse 6.
You know what? It might not be a bad idea if I learn how to read. I'm sitting here and and I gotta admit, dyslexia sometimes can be a very bad thing. You want me to tell you what I'm sitting here looking at? I'm looking at you, and I'm saying Judges. I have no idea. I'm sorry, Teresa.
That's okay.
Somebody flip in Jude, chapter 1, which that's it's only got one chapter, go to the very end of your Bible and you'll find it, right before Revelation.
The other end of the field, isn't it?
Yeah, all the way to the very end of your Bible. Jude, chapter 1, which is only one chapter, verse 6. Somebody read that, and then I'll actually read Job.
And the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day.
All right, now, see, here's a funny thing, is God shows no preference. One person is equal to another person. You know, you want me to tell you how you get better stature than another person gets? You say, you're my only path, and this person says, I'm going down my own path. I'm now protected by God, that person is chased by God. So, the simple fact of the matter is God, even one of the most powerful and strongest angels, fell from his grace by his pride and by coveting what God had. Now I want to show you something. Joel chapter 2, chapter 2, verse 11. And this one's, I guess you could say either scary or pretty neat. The Lord raises his voice in the presence of his armies. Okay? Now, I don't believe that all of mankind put together in a fight on a battlefield with an angel that God said you can only use a sword, that he would make the entire world's one angel. He would make the entire world's army flee, run from him. What are you going to do? Blow him up? You can't hurt him. I mean, you shoot him with a tank, he laughs.
Can't see it.
No, you hit him with a nuke. What's he going to do? Angels walk around on the face of the sun. He's not bothered by heat. All right? His camp is very large. Okay? Again, God is stating, this is who you're going to go up against. Okay? Those who cry out his command are powerful. Indeed, the day of the Lord is terrible and dead and dreadful. Who can endure it? All right. So again, God is saying that this period of time, and the way I'm stressing this is, and I'm gonna go ahead at this point and tell you why I'm stressing so hard. Because a lot of people in this period of time right here say, well, if y'all get raptured, I'll get saved. I'll believe you. Whenever somebody says that, you really need to point this out to them. Now, you weren't willing to live for God on a planet right here and now that you won't have to die. It's not like you're in Iran. Now, a person in Iran, I would probably agree with that they probably could get saved during the Great Tribulation, because there's people in Iran right now, if they find out you're saved, they will literally torture you to death for doing this. Now that person, but an American citizen who's not used to anything of that nature, saying, if y'all disappear, I'll get saved because y'all disappeared. If you're not willing to live for God now, what makes you think you're willing to die for Him later? It's like this. the Antichrist. You can take the mark, you can go buy your groceries, you can go walk around on the streets, you're free to do whatever you want to do, or you can refuse the mark and we're going to take you to that guillotine, we're going to cut your head off. You know, I mean, how many people you see shooting their hands up? Oh, I'm taking the guillotine. You know, I mean, this is not going to be easy, and that's what God's trying to tell us here. This is going to be worse than you can imagine. All right. Now, all right, who wants to read for me? Somebody take Isaiah chapter 30, Isaiah chapter 30, 25, and I'll take Ezekiel chapter 30, verse 3. So who's got Isaiah? Isaiah chapter 30.
I got it.
Okay, Isaiah chapter 30, 25.
And there shall be upon every high mountain and upon every high hill rivers and streams of waters in the day of the great slaughter, when the towers fall.
All right. Now, read that one more time.
And there shall be upon every high mountain and upon every high hill rivers and streams of waters in the days of the great slaughter, when the towers fall.
You know, if you were to take just a second to think about kind of what that is saying is, you know, normally if you're sitting beside a pretty running stream, it's pretty peaceful and, you know, kind of like you just sit there and listen to the water. You know, you kind of be just I mean, it's just really nice. For God's sake, there ain't gonna be no nice. I mean, even though all these streams, all the things that you thought that you really enjoyed, all is gonna be bad. All is gonna be bad. And you know, and I'll be the first one to admit, sometimes when you got to teach a class like this, you don't really know how many people really want to listen to this, but it's not my words. This Bible's saying this, not me. I mean, as a matter of fact, I ain't added one scripture to it that had my name attached to it. Well, now I want to show you something. Ezekiel chapter 30, verse 3. Now, you know, I did a study, and we made it before this thing, which Ed was there. I did a study, basically started at chapter 1, and I went verse by verse until I had to stop in Ezekiel. And Ezekiel is one of the neatest books. I mean, love Isaiah, love Jeremiah, but Ezekiel, he's a fella that basically, if somebody took you and drug you down the road hooked to a pickup truck, that's about Ezekiel's life. You know? I mean, God told him straight up, Ezekiel, why don't you go preach a message? And he says, oh, by the way, no one's going to listen to you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like God's kidding. You know, okay, God, you just told me to go preach this message, but by the way, no one's going to listen to me? Why am I going to go preach a message no one's going to listen to you? You know, it's because of this. It's because of this. This is the reason why God tells all of us to preach this message.
I've been reading that this week.
People don't want to hear it. You know?
It's early in Isaiah.
Yeah, exactly. You think about something. What is the thing that brings loads and loads of people into church? Oh, you know what? You know, God's going to bless you. You're going to have your brand new car, house. He's going to load you up with some cash. You know, all these things. It ain't like, oh, dude, you're perishing. You're going to hell. You know, I mean, it's not like that. He's just, okay, tell everybody the truth. Just tell them there's good and there's bad. And we're looking at both of them tonight, and we're looking at the really bad, though. So Ezekiel, chapter 3, chapter 30, verse 3. For a day is near, and I like the way he starts that out. A day belonging to the Lord is near. Twice. Wants to repeat it. It will be a day of cloud, a time of doom. And watch this. Remember what I told you before? I know some of y'all weren't here, but here's how you always tell when God's talking to the whole world for the nations. Everybody. The Great Tribulation, this 7-year, the 70th year of Daniel, the 7 years of Great Tribulation, for the entire world, it will be terrible. Now, all right, some of you, which I know Bill was, the entire time we taught Revelation. And you know, the funny thing is, as a matter of fact, who was it that asked me? Bonnie or Mike? Mike asked me, didn't he? Mike asked me, why did God say, burn up all the green grass, trees, and everything else? And then he comes right back along and he says, all right, don't burn it again. He didn't, but he doesn't say again. He says, don't burn the green grass this time. All right, you think about something. If I start a fire in one of my fields, grass comes back almost instantaneously because it loves fire. Oh, grass loves fire. Matter of fact, you can run a whole, and you know this as well as I do, you can burn a field off and within a week's time it will turn green. Okay? Yeah. It gets rid of insects, it does all kinds of wonderful things, but it comes right back up, right? So, you think about something. At this point in time, what he's doing is God's letting green come back up, and mankind can see it, and they say, ooh, maybe it's over. Not. It's not over yet. All right. Now, I told you, I'm going to try my best to, I'm going to finish on time. I'm hoping I am anyway. All right, somebody turn to Proverbs 21:3. Hosea, who's got Proverbs? Somebody call it out.
21, I'm at. 21:3.
21:3.
To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice.
All right. So what God's saying here is do what he says do. Obey him. So read in Hosea 9:5, chapter 9.
I got that one.
All right, go ahead.
Isaiah 9:5.
Hosea 9:5.
What will you do on the day your Lord appointed festivals, on the feast days of the Lord?
Is that the end of it?
Yes, sir.
All right, read the next one.
Even if they escape from destruction, Egypt will gather them, and Memphis will bury them. Their treasures of silver will be taken over by bearers, and thorns will overrun their tents.
Okay.
Briars, not bearers. Briars.
That's all right.
Oops.
Me and you both got dyslexia. That'll we fit in the class.
Oops.
Let me tell you something pretty neat. All right. Now, you talking about now, and I don't really mean to be like this, but I do.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. But anyway, you ever ask yourself why don't we ever do any of God's festivals? Okay, like, and I've told this to 2 classes now, this 3rd class I'm going to tell this to, okay? How many of you knew last Monday was Yom Kippur?
You didn't
The
until
Day
you
of
last
Atonement.
class.
Huh?
I didn't until you last class.
Okay. Now, you can walk up to a Christian and you can say, hey, you know, today's Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. Are you going to celebrate it? Now, and I'm going to be fair. I'm going to be fair, okay? So they say, well, that's come and gone. No, that ain't come and gone. Read the Bible. It says celebrate it forever, okay? Now, I've got a question for you. Are you a member of God's people? Yeah, I am. Okay. So, why do we celebrate other holidays? Like we're fixing to celebrate one, it's a wonderful one for a child, but you'll see adults dress their whole house up for what's coming.
Halloween.
Fall festival, you know, I'm not even gonna call out the regular name for it. Okay, so, and hey, you know, cool, gonna celebrate, I'm good with it. But why do we not celebrate any of God's festivals? Okay, well, I did, I went home, and at sundown, I began my 25-hour fast. And just like I told them guys, and I'm not going to say something I did say, and I think Bill might know what I did say, but I'm not going to say that. But plain and simple fact is, when I celebrated it, I fasted for 24 hours, but I ate more than I've ever eaten, and I was more full than I've ever been full, and I had the most energy, the most wide openness. I ate all day. I had prayer. I had Bible reading. I had listening to preachers. I watched preachers. Everything I did all day long. I even fought to not work that day. I did not do any work that day, okay? But they say, well, why do you celebrate it? Well, here's the reason why I said, now everybody can't fast. That I understand, but you can fast in something you would normally do. You should just skip out on that instead of food or whatever it is, right? But why on earth would I do that when Jesus paid my atonement? I just answered the question by asking you a question. Because Jesus paid my atonement. Well, why would I not celebrate that day? The Bible's clear on this. It says to celebrate it forever. Now, you'll have all kinds of preachers that'll probably tell me that I'm wrong. Show it to me. That's all I ask. Please show me in the Bible where I should not celebrate those particular holidays. Let's use these. Passover. Did Jesus ever miss Passover? No, never missed Passover. And he was the Passover lamb. Did Jesus skip first fruits? Nope, didn't skip first fruits because he was the first fruits. Did Jesus skip, how about this one? Pentecost. All Pentecost means is 50 days. It's 50 days. Did he skip it? Nope. He filled all of his workers with the Holy Spirit. Every holiday in the Bible, if you read it and you read it carefully, you'll understand that some of them, and I'll give you an idea of some, all right? Hanukkah. Now, is that one of the holy holidays? No, it's not. It's actually a Maccabean holiday. Or how about Purim? How about that one? Should we celebrate Purim? No. We're not a Jew. We don't celebrate because we weren't being slaughtered. The Jews were being slaughtered, and that is a Jewish holiday. All right? But the other holidays clearly state, and I tell you something, you really want to see how important it is to celebrate Passover? There was a guy came up to Moses, and then we're gonna read our last verse, and then I'm gonna be closed for the day. There was a guy came up to Moses, and you know what he said to Moses? He says, Moses, there's some guys who had to handle a dead body, which is the law says they were not allowed to come back into the congregation until they went through the purification part. Now, this part you're going to love. If you don't love this, you're missing something in your Christian walk. Moses goes and asks God. He says, can they celebrate Passover even though they're unclean? You know what God says? Yes, they can celebrate Passover. It's the only one they can celebrate. Unclean. Why? There you go. Look at this joker sitting in front of you. I'm as unclean as it comes. I am a pig-eating Gentile. I'm as unclean as I can be. But how am I made clean? Through the Passover lamb, which his name is Jesus. Now, I'm going to finish with this.
Quit eating.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. You know, I'm gonna go with the Peter's suggestion on that. Lord, I don't touch anything unclean. If you bless it and I make it clean, it is clean. I'm sticking with the bacon.
You can clean up the hog.
No, you can't clean up a hog, but he
goes
sure
right
does
back to
say,
that
he sure tastes good though.
mire.
All right, last verse, and then I'll close with this. Psalm 37:18. Now, the Psalms, and probably, I don't know if you knew this, but the Psalms are loaded with prophecy. So, 37, Psalm 37, and the verse I want you to listen to carefully is 18, but I'm going to start at 17. For the arms of the wicked will be broken, but the Lord supports the righteous. Okay? 18. The Lord watches over the blameless all their days. You need to really catch this. That's why I wanted to close with this one. And their inheritance will last forever. Now, we just talked about the 7 worst years that mankind will ever experience. But you can ask, and you can probably go ask 99.9% of people, tell me what you think that tribulation will be like. Well, it's probably going to be pretty rough, you know. No, pretty rough ain't even a close word. You know, I mean, you think about how many people are used to running water, used to going down there to Burger King, buying a hamburger. They're used to all these different things, and it's all gone. And now, unless you're willing to take that mark, and now here's the part you really need to catch. If you're a businessman, you own a Burger King, you don't take the mark, you can't buy and sell no longer. Okay? The customer who comes up to the window, if he doesn't have the mark of the beast, he can't buy a hamburger no more. Okay? Every ounce of your life will be monitored, watched, and everything else. If you do not believe me, you need to really Google how people do business in China. They are based on merits. The Chinese government can take everything from you in a blink of an eye based on merits. They can do whatever they please And that's the way the world will be. And here's the simple thing is about it is, you know, there is actually going to be people, and we're not going, this is the end for the timeline, but there is going to be people, and this is where I'm on end, that are gonna come across the finish line right here. I'm talking about live people like us. And if you want to read about it, it's in Matthew 25, it's the sheep and the goats. And they will actually walk across the veil into the millennial kingdom. But I want you to picture something. If you live 7 years hell on earth, when you walk across that veil, I can promise you, you're going to be one of the most grateful Christians ever to live to see who is now in charge. And the plain and simple fact of the matter is this. How many people, because once you accept the mark, there is no turning back. God will not forgive you. He will not receive you because you literally took the mark and you chose the beast. And that's the funny thing is about it is, you know, and I told Susan one day, I said, hey, we need to go ahead and type up our letter because I don't believe the rapture's all that far away. Put us a Bible over there and put the letter on the Bible and say, I'm here, you're here. Let me tell you how to get through this. And we watched this guy in Birmingham, and after I said that, we watched this guy in Birmingham, and this preacher did it. And it was he did such a great job on it, man. He told the congregation every step, get rid of your phone, do this, do that. And he went down all these steps and he said, let me tell you up front, and here's how he ended. You probably are not going to live through this. The odds are favorable, you will die. But if you do, you will be the happiest camper you ever seen walking across the finish line into the millennium